let's have some fun with some crazy NBA trades that likely don't happen, but who knows, maybe they could. A lot of these players in these trades are players who I would deem to be available at the right price. So listen, again, these are crazy NBA trades. This is not going to be the most precise video on the channel. I have a lot of other content, especially recently, breaking down NBA trades that we could realistically see happen. Those videos are deep dives into what GMs and executives and pretty much everyone around the salary cap, everyone inside the NBA is looking at all of those things right now. This video is more to have some fun. This time of year, there's a ton of rumors circulating, so let's have some fun in this video. Do not worry too much about the accuracy and precision of some of these trades. This is just meant to be a fun thought exercise, and what I actually want you to do is comment down below in the comment section some of your favorite fake trades that maybe aren't the most realistic thing. If you guys are new to Utility Sports, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content. And what really got me thinking about this? Well, it was this tweet from Chris Haynes on January 19th. He tweeted, "The Milwaukee Bucks are among multiple teams who are registering interest in trading for Atlanta Hawks star Dejounte Murray, league sources tell NBA on TNT and Bleacher Report." Now, behind this, Chris Haynes also wrote about and said that the Bucks have expressed not only interest, but significant interest in Dejounte Murray, and I want to talk about that in this video. That will actually be the last trade that we break down. We'll have multiple 3-team compositions, multiple trades in this video. In fact, I believe 5 of them. So there's a lot of fun stuff to break down. Let's jump into it now with trade number 1, and it's a 3-team deal between the Dallas Mavericks, Golden State Warriors, and Brooklyn Nets. Also, go give us a follow on Twitter if you haven't already. For the Mavericks, they get Andrew Wiggins, and what does it cost them? Well, it cost them Richaun Holmes, Maxi Kleber, and 2 second-round picks, and I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but Andrew Wiggins has actually been a pretty negative player this year for the Golden State Warriors, and he's under contract for quite a while. Around the league, a lot of executives, GMs will be looking at that as a negative value contract, so I think the price point is actually pretty realistic there for the Dallas Mavericks. They turn a couple of shorter, bad, lower-level contracts into one bigger one, but it is a better player in Andrew Wiggins, who has had some awesome moments throughout his career. The Brooklyn Nets get a ton of stuff, and for the Golden State Warriors, this is one big last hurrah, one more attempt to become true contenders once again with Steph Curry. And I think anytime you have a player like Steph Curry, a transformative player who has changed the entire game of basketball as we know it, you owe it to him and to yourselves as an organization to try and win as much as possible during his tenure with your team. The Warriors have converted on 4 NBA finals so far. They've been vastly successful with Curry, but they're looking for a 5th. They would love to win one more, and right now the way the team's playing, they're not in that mix. And a lot of people have asked me, hey, are they possibly going to be a team that rebuilds or kind of retools, sells? I just can't see them doing that. They have some interesting pieces, and here they're trading out pretty much the rest of their remaining draft compensation in a deal to now get good players on their roster. The Nets go full rebuild here. They get Richaun Holmes, Maxi Kleber. Those are 2 bad contracts. There is some flexibility there. Richaun Holmes is not a long-term contract. Maxi Kleber's contract is relatively cheap for the type of player he is. I'm sure down the road, once he stays healthy, hopefully at some point you can maybe even reroute that in a year or 2. You get Moses Moody, former lottery pick, has had some great moments this year for the Golden State Warriors in limited minutes. Of course, Steve Kerr, there's been the ongoing conversation about his lack of urgency to play some of his young guys, even when they're playing very well, like Kuminga and Moody specifically. And I think a change of scenery for Moody to Brooklyn could be good for him, and it could also be a good get for the Brooklyn Nets. And they get a bunch of picks in here. In fact, they get 4 second-round picks in totality. A lot of people seem to undervalue second rounders. They actually are a decent asset to have. Gives you some future trade flexibility moving up and down in the draft a bit. Maybe you can package 2 high second rounders to get into the back end of the first round if there's a player you want to target. There's a lot of different things you can do with them. Use them in other deals to sweeten the pot, or sometimes just flat out drafting. An example of a guy who hasn't made an impact this year, but I think is going to end up being a good player down the road, is Jordan Walsh, who the Celtics drafted in the 2nd round. And those are cheap contracts with a new 2nd round exception. We're going to see more of those players stick on rosters for quite some time. I think it was a beautiful thing in the new CBA. And then you also get 2 completely unprotected 1st round picks here if you're the Brooklyn Nets. And they're both from Golden State, the 2026 first and that 2028 first. And I know People are going to tell me, whoa, those picks are quite a ways down the road. If you're Brooklyn, would you rather have a Golden State Warriors pick this year or a Golden State Warriors pick 5 years from now? And the answer to me is, hey, load me up with some of those future Warriors selections, because once Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green are gone, what is this Warriors team going to look like? That's a lot of unknowns, and maybe they find a way to, wiggle through this and end up being pretty good on the back end of that. I just don't really believe that, and because of that, I would bet on their long-term failures if I was another franchise. I think getting 2026, which is a pretty loaded draft, to be honest. There's going to be a ton of talent. The Boozer twins specifically will be in that draft, and then the 2028 first round, who knows who's going to end up being in that draft. That's such a long ways out right now. You're really currently looking at 13-year-olds, 12-year-old players who are going to end up getting drafted in that 2028 first round, but they're going to end up potentially having a really high pick from that. They already own future picks from the Dallas Mavericks, the Phoenix Suns, so the Nets, who already have a lot of long-term assets, they add in other long-term assets here doing a deal like this. And yes, it does hurt to give up Nick Claxton, who is a really great defensive big. It hurts to give up Dorian Finney-Smith, who's one of the more versatile 3-and-D wings across the entire association. But trading them here in this deal, you get a lot of long-term financial flexibility, and you also get some very interesting draft compensation that I think you could end up turning into valuable assets down the road as you rebuild and retool with this current roster. And for the Warriors, it's a pretty no-brainer decision here. Yes, you sacrifice your future. Yes, you take a big gamble, big risk pulling off a trade like this. But the reason you do it is to try and win and contend. Nick Claxton, not only does he give you a lot more size than you currently have in your roster and on your starting lineup, but he's also a perfect defensive-minded big that this team needs. He's a fantastic rim protector. He's pretty mobile for his size. I'm a big believer in Nick Claxton. I think he would be great in Golden State, especially with how many illegal screens they allow the Warriors to set every single game. And then Dorian, just another perfect fit defensive player. He's honestly going to give you everything that you need from Andrew Wiggins. So this is a deal that, honestly, if I was Dallas, I'd try to just get Dorian Finney-Smith and Nick Claxton myself. And obviously DFS would be returning to Dallas in that type of situation. But here are the Warriors, 3-team composition. I do think this makes some sense. Again, these are crazy trades. Don't be like, oh, this will never happen. That's kind of the point. The point here is to have some fun, look at things that likely don't happen. But hey, these are fun trade ideas to flesh out. It's that time of the year. Let's enjoy it while we can. Going into our next package here, another 3-team trade. This one between the Sacramento Kings, Washington Wizards, and the LA Clippers. And this kind of revolves around the Clippers calling up their old friend Michael Winger and working with him to kind of eat some salary for them. And they're going to compensate them with some second-round picks to do so. And really, it comes down to Monte McNair's continued interest in Kyle Kuzma. A few years ago, there was a trade offer that was supposedly accepted before the Lakers kind of backed out of it and then pivoted, traded with the Wizards themselves actually to get Russell Westbrook. Now we see the Kings and Wizards actually working together with the Clippers to get a deal done. And Kuzma now goes to the Kings, plays for Monte McNair. I think he's a pretty good fit into that Zoom-styled offense there in Sacramento. I also think he could help them with his defensive rebounding, another playmaker in the room as well. I don't think he's the perfect fit in Sacramento, but I think at the price point, descending contract, it does make some sense. And one of the kind of falling points for the Kings in trading for Pascal Siakam really hinged on the likelihood that Siakam was going to cost $35-40 million a year. Kuzma, we already know what the contract looks like. It's going to save Sacramento quite a bit of money moving forward, going for a player like him rather than Siakam. The Wizards, what do they get for moving off of Kuzma? They get PJ Tucker. Not really anything there in terms of value. Listen, maybe that's a tradable contract going into next year. He's out of the Clippers rotation right now. He's really in here just to make the salary work. Like I said, kind of doing the Clippers a favor, eating some salary for them. You do get Davion Mitchell, former lottery pick. Liked him quite a bit coming out of Baylor. His nickname is Off, and I actually think he could play a role on this Wizards team and even make them better to a certain extent. I think the Wizards could afford him having the ball in his hands a bit more than he has in Sacramento, where he was playing next to Tyrese Halliburton for a little bit, but then of course De'Aaron Fox and Malik Monk on a nightly basis now. There's just not a lot of opportunity there in Sacramento for Davion Mitchell to have the ball in his hands, which is what he's best at, and if you go back to his Baylor film, that's where he found most of his success. You also get some intriguing other pieces in here if you're Washington. Mason Plumlee, a player who I am certain you could reroute to another team in a deal. he's in here again. You're helping the Clippers with some salary, and one of the players you get because of that is a former second round pick who I still think has some pretty high upside, although he doesn't get a lot of run or really consistent minutes at this point of his career, and that is BJ Boston, former second round pick out of Kentucky. He was a former top recruit in the high school ranks, and you're looking at a player who I think is super smooth with the ball in his hands. His shot making, it kind of ebbs and flows. There's going to be nights where he's on fire and he's going to shoot 6 of 10 or around that 55-60% threshold. There's also going to be nights where he probably goes 3 of 12. So Wizards fans are going to be like, oh, that's perfect, that fits in right here with us. But I still think that if you focus his development with his size, length, shot making upside, maybe there's something there. Again, I'm not super moved by it. It's really about the draft pick compensation for me. You're taking in these salaries, so you're getting incentivized with a couple of extra second round picks from the Clippers, and then from the Kings, you'd love to get 2 first round picks for Kyle Kuzma. I just can't see that really happening, so you get a 2026 first round pick completely unprotected. Maybe the Kings would have some stipulations on that, like top 4 protected, top 6 protected, something along those lines. I don't really exactly know what they would look to do in something like this, but still a pretty good asset. And then you're getting multiple second rounders from the Kings to go along with Davion Mitchell. So overall, you're looking at a situation where the Wizards are actually in a spot where they're getting 5 second round picks, a first round pick. And you might say, well, the Wizards don't need 5 second round picks. Look at their deals. When they traded Bradley Beal, when they traded Kristaps Porzingis, they've actually been taking in a bunch of second round picks, and then they've used them in other deals. Like when they moved up with the Indiana Pacers, they sent 2 picks to move up 1 spot. And that sounds crazy, I know, but it stopped the Pacers from trading down with another team, and it allowed the Wizards to get their guy in Bilal Coulibaly. So those second rounders, like I said earlier, do actually have some value around the league. And then for the Clippers, what are you getting at the cost of Tucker, Plumlee, BJ Boston, and 2 second rounders? You're getting Harrison Barnes. And I think if there's one thing this Clippers team could still use, is probably another tweener forward who offers some size, length, and some shooting from the perimeter. Now, Harrison Barnes is not a great player at this point of his career. I wouldn't even argue he's a very good player. I think he's a solid contributor, and he's under contract moving forward, which I do believe is important for the Clippers as we enter, situations where the new CBA is going to become more and more impactful. The Clippers need tradable salaries because they're going to no longer be able to aggregate salaries as soon as next season. So this is their final chance to do so, and they do so in a big way, adding PJ Tucker with Plumlee and BJ Boston to increase that salary into a Harrison Barnes level $17 million a year type of salary. And because of that, that gives them some more trade flexibility moving forward into future years, because they'll be able to trade for anyone making less than $17 million using Barnes as the trade filler in a deal. And I also do think he can just flat out help them this year. He's an upgrade over PJ Tucker and Plumlee at this point. Like I said, BJ Boston's completely out of the rotation. So you're really turning Tucker and Plumlee and a couple of second rounders into Harrison Barnes. And I think that's a huge win for the Clippers. I think this is a good win for the Kings and the Wizards. You get a bunch of stuff to work with. You get some young pieces. You also get some second rounders and 1 first round pick in the deal. Moving on to our next trade, and this is one for my Indiana Pacers fans in the Discord section. Yes, I'm thinking about you, Patrick, Zach, all of you guys. Make sure you guys go join the Discord, especially if you're a Pacers fan. We got a lot of diehard Indiana fans in the Discord. It's a great place to be. We talk about a bunch of different things across the NBA. We talk about college hoops. Heck, we even talk about pop culture in there. It's a fantastic place to be. Links in the description for that. Go join that right now. I will probably welcome you the moment you join, so go get in there right now. And then the Indiana Pacers. Well, they're not done buying. That's at least a theory that we could see maybe come to fruition. After trading 3 first-round picks for Pascal Siakam, along with Bruce Brown going out the door, the Pacers still have a lot of trade flexibility. And the question is, are they actually done making trades? The answer to that is maybe not, because they were pretty stingy with the Raptors on a few players: Jarris Walker, Benedict Mathurin, and Andrew Nembhard. Why, you might ask? Well, partially because they're big parts of their future, but also the other side of that coin is maybe they're waiting to use those players in trades as well, and they still have more tradable first-round picks moving forward. In this deal, the Pacers get Mikal Bridges and Dorian Finney-Smith. Dorian Finney-Smith and Rick Carlisle have a very good working relationship from their time together in the Dallas Mavericks organization. I know that Rick Carlisle personally loves Dorian Finney-Smith as a player, really likes not only the style that he plays with, but was a huge part in overseeing his development as an undrafted free agent coming out of Florida. And then Mikal Bridges, I mean, he's like the perfect type of player to put with a Tyrese Halliburton and Pascal Siakam. a super talented 3-and-D wing. And I hate using that word because it's such a poor moniker. Mikal Bridges does way more than just play defense and shoot three-pointers. He's a perfect off-the-catch player. He catches, he's able to attack closeouts, he can rise up into mid-range pull-up jump shots. And right now in Brooklyn, is it winning a lot? No, he's overtaxed currently. He's not a number one player. He's not a 1A player. The beautiful thing in Indiana is he's almost splitting that 1B role or 2A role with Pascal Siakam, where Haliburton is clearly the lifeblood of the offense. He's going to run the show in Indiana. We've seen how successful that can be already this year. But then with that, you have Siakam and Bridges to kind of lighten his load a little bit to counterbalance each other. And I think it's actually such a perfect fit. The trio of Haliburton, Bridges, and Siakam. The Pacers defense has been woefully bad this year, getting both Bridges and Siakam and Dorian Finney-Smith in there as well. Those are 3+ defenders at really important positions with good length, size, athleticism, and switchability on the defensive end. I would say Dorian Finney-Smith can guard 1 through 4. I would say Bridges, when he's really focused and dialed in, he can guard 1 through 4. We haven't seen that as much since getting traded to Brooklyn because of the amount of effort he has to exert on offense. But with that, you're getting, again, 2 really versatile defensive players. I think Siakam can guard 2 through 4. So you've got a very intriguing collection now of wing and forward type players who I think complement each other well offensively and give you a good defensive identity on the defensive end with your ability to switch, stay in front of guys now, and it just really improves your defense. And then for the Brooklyn Nets, well, what do you get in this deal? You get Buddy Hield, big expiring contract, probably could see him get rerouted somewhere else. We already talked about the Dallas Mavericks in this video, but I think the Mavericks would be a team that should express interest in Buddy Hield if he becomes available in a 3-team type of composition. Obi Toppin is in this deal as well. I think could actually be a good landing spot here for the Brooklyn Nets. Obi Toppin is a big-time athlete, and I think if you give him kind of a runway, of course, as a Dayton Flyer, I would love to see a runway for him. I think he's a player who offensively is such a good scorer. He's honestly a very underrated player for his offensive end. Now, defensively, there's a lot of struggles, and he doesn't do a lot of things super well. I think his side-to-side mobility and agility is a little bit of a problem on the defensive end, and he's not big enough to really match up well with other bigs, so he's kind of a tweener in a bad way. But I still think that for the Nets offensively, he could be a really intriguing combination with Cam Thomas. Then you have really the big pieces in this deal. Jarris Walker and Ben Sheppard, 2 players who the Pacers drafted in the first round in the 2023 NBA draft, a draft class that I believe was loaded. Jarris Walker, I think a really dynamic young player, scored 15 points the other night in really his first large amount of NBA minutes in a single game. First time really he's been given a big opportunity, and I think he showed out in that situation as the Pacers won against the Sacramento Kings. Jarris Walker, he's in the first year of his career. Same with Ben Sheppard. You have these guys under contract for a long time if you're Brooklyn, and if you're looking to start a rebuild, these are the 2 type of players you want to get. A tweener, big forward who can defend across multiple positions in Jarris Walker. You might be saying, well, why did the Pacers give him up then? Because Mikal Bridges is a lot better than him right now. This accelerates the Pacers' timeline. The Nets reset their own timeline by getting worse currently. I know that they owe picks to the Houston Rockets, so you might say, well, that's not a smart decision. It's about the actual long-term outlook for this Nets team, though, and the more young talent they can get, I still think it's for the betterment of their team if they're not going to make a big buy move, which they haven't so far. I thought they would be a team that would have maybe made a push for Damian Lillard when he was available. They did not do that. Ben Sheppard, again, athletic player who I think has really good hip fluidity. Offensively, I think this kid's going to actually be really, really good. He can shoot, he can play make, he's comfortable out in space, and I think with that, Ben Sheppard's an intriguing player I would like to have in my organization. You're getting 2 second-round picks, and you're also getting 2 first-round picks. In this deal, you're getting a 2028 first-rounder completely unprotected and a 2030 first-rounder. I have a top 10 protection on it. Maybe you could argue lottery protected. Maybe you could argue top 5 protected. That's something that I think there would be some fluidity between the 2 teams discussing, and at some point they would come to some type of agreement on this, but I think this is a fun deal to look at. The Pacers become an instant contender. Right now, I still think they're really good. I think they're a team that could present a ton of problems to other Eastern Conference powerhouses like Milwaukee and Miami, most specifically, also Philadelphia. But I think the Nets, if they kind of decide to sell, Mikal Bridges and Dorian Finney-Smith would be big level ups for this current Pacers team. Moving on to our next package here, we have a 3-team deal here, and Zach LaVine, who is now reportedly going to miss a couple of weeks with an injury per Shams Charania, perhaps he's played his last game with the Chicago Bulls. And this is a weird one. Okay, this is one of those really crazy trades that you have to bear with me here for a minute. The reason I have Zach LaVine going to the Charlotte Hornets, there's a couple of things. The Hornets just got new ownership. Anytime that you get new owners, they typically like to make a big splash move. They want to improve their team. They want to do something big, grandiose, and crazy. Last year, Matt Ishbia, his big grandiose move was trading for Kevin Durant. That's not going to be available this year, especially not for the Charlotte Hornets. But there is one player who's available who holds almost zero value across the league. That guy is Zach LaVine. So the Hornets get him, and you might say, well, why would they do that? That seems like a terrible idea. Oh, trust me, it is. But Mitch Kupchak's also trying to keep his job. So you might say, well, why would he make a terrible trade? Well, on his way out, he might just be essentially screwing the Hornets over by maxing out their backcourt. And the idea behind it is if Mitch Kupchak's the one who makes this trade, maybe the ownership says, well, he's the one who's kind of leading this charge. We got to stick with him and see this thing through going into next season. So maybe it buys Mitch Kupchak another year on the job. He's nearly 70 years old. I mean, I like I'm saying here, I don't believe that's what they should do, but I could see this kind of happening. I'm not saying it will, but I'm like a little kind of scared for Hornets fans in case it does. In this deal, Amir Coffey also comes from the Clippers to the Hornets. I actually like him quite a bit. He's been pretty efficient this year in limited volume for the Clippers. They also get 3 second-round picks from LA, and then the Bulls in here. Well, okay, interesting deal. The Bulls get Gordon Hayward, big expiring contract, probably would buy him out. Super important for the Bulls. They are super close to the luxury tax. So in this deal, they actually stay below the luxury tax. They actually save a little bit of money in the process too, which I do think is important. They get Mason Plumlee in this deal. We talked about him earlier. They get Frank Ntilikina just to make the money work here from the Hornets perspective, and a 2029 first-round lottery-protected pick from the Charlotte Hornets. The Hornets already are operating without one of their picks due to a former trade. The New York Knicks currently have a hold of it. That has a lottery protection on it. So I could see the Hornets doing something crazy like that again. And this is probably one of the best packages you can get right now on the market for Zach LaVine. And it doesn't look like a lot, and that's because there's not a lot of value right now around the league for Zach LaVine because of his contract. The Hornets make a big splash. The Bulls, well, they're the Chicago Bulls. They get a 2029 first-rounder lottery protected, and they get off of LaVine's contract. And the Clippers swoop in and get Miles Bridges as a one-year rental to try and make a push in the playoffs this year. Remember, in the offseason, they made a trade for KJ Martin. He just didn't work out. They ended up trading him to Philadelphia in the James Harden trade. Miles Bridges is like a souped-up version of that. Way better player, more comfortable with the ball in his hands, a better actual athlete, functionally in terms of applying it on an NBA court. And because of that, I think the Clippers would look at Miles Bridges as a great fit. He makes less than $8 million. And again, if you're trying to go all in this season, a rental of Miles Bridges at the cost of a few second-round picks, I could see actually making a deal of sense. Then we go into this deal, and it's the big one. It's the entire reason for this video, and that is a Dejounte Murray trade to the Milwaukee Bucks. And listen, I heard a lot of people floating ideas of, well, if they combine Pat Connaughton and Bobby Portis' contracts, they can do... Why would Atlanta do anything centered around those two guys? You're not going to get first-round picks for those guys if you route into a third team. I think the sneaky player to watch for in a big Dejounte Murray trade, again, I do not think this will happen. I don't believe the Chris Haynes report, to be honest with you. I think it's a lot of smoke and mirrors right now. But if we are going to discuss a Dejounte Murray trade, I actually think the sneaky player to watch for getting traded is Brook Lopez, because the Milwaukee Bucks are awful defensively this year. And it's not Brook Lopez's fault, but their drop coverage just doesn't work. And what I mean by that is, with Brook being super limited mobility-wise, you're going to play drop coverage with him. You're forced to do that. Right now, though, who are the Bucks' chase defenders? Well, that is Damian Lillard and Malik Beasley. And that's not going to get the job done defensively with drop coverage. So in this situation, the Milwaukee Bucks likely move Giannis to a little bit more center minutes. They try and play a little bit smaller. Bobby Portis probably takes another good hefty amount of the center minutes. You can still play with some pace and space, and you can keep your offense spaced out and stretching the floor for Giannis. You probably see a little bit more of the young guys like MarJon Beauchamp on the floor as well for Milwaukee after a trade like this, which I like for them. But it's a big one. It's a big trade. It's a crazy trade. And the Houston Rockets are actually the team that jumps in to get Brook Lopez. Remember, they're the ones who heavily pushed for Brook Lopez this offseason before Lopez signed a 2-year deal with the Milwaukee Bucks to stay with Milwaukee, where he won a championship. Well, now he gets rerouted to Houston. The Rockets are assuming that contract. The Bucks get Dejounte Murray, who again stylistically changes them quite a bit. He's another point guard. I just don't really know how that works with Damian Lillard. I don't really understand this for Milwaukee. Again, I think this is smoke and mirrors, but if we're going to talk about it, you get Bruno Fernando. Wesley Matthews comes back to Milwaukee as well. This does bolster Milwaukee's defense, I would say, a significant amount. Now, I know right now there's a narrative going around that Dejounte Murray is super overrated defensively. I think he's like slightly overrated defensively. He's still a good defender. He gets a lot of steals. He's got a super long wingspan. He's more of a defensive playmaker than a stopper, and it's very important to differentiate those two things. They're just not equivalents to each other, and that's okay. Dorian Finney-Smith is more of a stopper, whereas Dejounte Murray is a playmaker defensively, and there's value to both of those things as long as you understand which one you're talking about. Dejounte Murray, again, he's not going to stop a bunch of guys, but you're going to get more steals, deflections. You're going to get out and run more, which I think would be good for Milwaukee as well. They've got a great offense already. I think getting even just slightly better defensively would help them. And it sounds crazy to give up the guy who finished second in Defensive Player of the Year last year to get better defensively. But stylistically, this would help the Bucks. They could blitz a bit more. They could do a lot of different crazy things, which is what Adrian Griffin actually wanted to do initially when he got the job in Milwaukee. They tried to play Brook Lopez a little bit higher up at the level of the screen. They've tried to be a little bit more aggressive defensively. It didn't work. So then they've reverted back to some of the things they were doing a year ago. And well, what did we see a year ago? They got lit up by the Miami Heat, especially the DHOs between Bam Adebayo and Duncan Robinson, because it just didn't work in that matchup. And I don't think you can go into this playoffs with that same, kind of idea of, hey, we're going to have Brook Lopez playing deep drop. It's just not going to work. Jimmy Butler's mid-range game will eat that alive. Duncan Robinson will eat that alive. If you look at Boston, I mean, they shoot more threes than anybody. Kristaps Porzingis pick and pop, he's going to eat that alive. So this is a big transformational change for the Bucks, but maybe something that is worth doing. And then for Atlanta, you get a bunch of expiring salary here. Oladipo, Landale, Jae'Sean Tate, you can get off of all of those contracts. This gives you a lot of salary cap relief moving forward. And you might say, well, why would the Hawks just make a trade like this for salary cap relief? Well, tell me why they traded John Collins. It was for salary cap relief. They've made moves in the past to kind of reshift this roster. They have new management. They're not the same management that gave Dejounte Murray, or that made the Dejounte Murray trade. Now, they did give Dejounte Murray an extension, but that extension probably helps them in trade talks here this season. And the big pieces in this deal, you get a first-round pick from the Houston Rockets. This is via the Brooklyn Nets, so it's a likely top 10 pick this season. I think that's going to be a pretty valuable asset for Atlanta as they look to kind of bulk out their team and add in some more young talent. You get Andre Jackson Jr., who is one of those players on one of those second-round exception contracts. Like that quite a bit for them, under contract for very cheap amount of money for quite a while. I think as he grows and develops, he could be a really nice piece next to Trae Young and some of their other pieces like Jalen Johnson. And then you also get a bunch of second-round picks in this deal. This completely wipes Milwaukee void of all of their other assets. They just don't have anything to work with, honestly, from a trade asset standpoint. But this is the best they can do. Brook Lopez is the guy that I see going out the door in something like this, and it actually helps the Bucks get below the second apron here as well. So a lot of crazy stuff in this one. There's a lot of weird moving pieces and parts, but it's honestly, if there's going to be something crazy, this is something that maybe, just maybe, in the right world, we see something like that. I hope you guys did enjoy this video. Make sure to go follow us on those socials, on Instagram, Twitter. Go join that Discord. Link is in the description. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe after today's video. I really hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, again, let me know down in the comment section some of those fictional mock trades that you have that are a little crazy and out there. Again, I know this video is not the most precise or accurate compared to the others on the channel, but I wanted to have a bit of fun in this one. Go check out some of those trade guides for other accurate, detailed content, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.